Hello, and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Productions channel here at YouTube, and welcome to another Album of the Week video. This is episode number 221. Today, I am here to celebrate the 40th anniversary for Born Again, the infamous 11th studio album from Black Sabbath. The only album with legendary Deep Purple singer Ian Gillan, originally released through both Vertigo, Europe and Japan, and Warner Brothers Records on September 12th, 1983. So with all that said, let's begin. With the departure of vocalist Ronnie James Dio and drummer Vinny Appice in 1982, who of course moved on to forming Dio with releasing their debut album Holy Diver in the same year of 1983, Sabbath's future was in doubt. The band switched management to the Al Capone of pop himself, Don Arden, Sharon Osbourne's father, and he suggested Ian Gillan as the new vocalist. According to Tony Iommi, the band was put together on paper. We'd never rehearsed. This also saw the return of original drummer Bill Ward, who had previously left the band in 1980 after Heaven and Hell. The band had initially considered vocalists such as Robert Plant and supposedly even David Coverdale before settling on Ian Gillan. They even received an audition tape from a then unknown Michael Bolton. Iommi told Hit Parader magazine in late 1983 that Gillan was the best candidate, saying, "His shriek is legendary." Gillan was at first reluctant, but his manager convinced him to meet with Iommi and Butler at the Bear, a pub in Oxford. After a night of heavy drinking, Gillan officially committed to the project in February 1983, at the expense of not notifying his previous band members and Gillan, so they found out just like everybody else, in the papers, which brought the end to the band Gillan, as noted or brought up and mentioned in my Album of the Week episode on Magic, the final Gillan album. Sabbath began recording in May of 1983 with producer Robin Black at Richard Branson's Manor Studio, located in the Oxfordshire countryside. Robin Black had worked with the band previously as an engineer on the Sabotage record from 1975. The project was originally intended to be a new supergroup, and the members of the band had no intention of billing themselves as Black Sabbath. At some point after recording had been completed, Arden insisted that they use the recognizable Sabbath name, and the members were overruled. According to Geezer Butler, "We thought we were doing a kind of Gillan, Iommi, Butler, Ward album. That is the way we approached the album. When we had finished the album, we took it to the record company and they said, well, here's the contract. It is going to go out as a Black Sabbath album." The band had cut about 8 songs total, with at least 2 or what would become 2 instrumental type of tracks or whatever, with only 7 being chosen. The song The Fallen would be left unreleased until bootlegs of the rough mixes would come out, again, being able to float within the underground or whatever, to then finally being officially used as a bonus track on the deluxe editions that came out several years ago. Well, this beginning story isn't complete without any mention of the sound mix and album cover. which is the stuff of legends. The notorious sleeve depicting this devilish, bright red baby was done by Steve Crusher Julie. Hope I pronounced that correctly. A designer at Kerrang! Magazine who had also worked on Ozzy Osbourne's Speak of the Devil, aka Talk of the Devil in the UK. It is based on a black and white photocopy of a photograph published in a 1968 magazine. The same photograph was also used for the 12-inch version of Depeche Mode's New Life. Tony liked the album cover, but the rest of the band, not so much. Bill Ward hated it, and as for Ian Gillan, well, his reaction goes like this. I looked at the cover and puked. Then I heard the mix and puked. That's classic. Speaking of the album mix, when the band heard the final product, they were horrified at the muffled mix. In Tony Iommi's biography, he states that Gillen inadvertently blew a couple of tweeters in the studio speakers by playing the backing tracks too loud, and nobody noticed. We just thought it was a bit of a funny sound. But it went very wrong somewhere between the mix and the mastering and the pressing of that album. The sound was really dull and muffly. I didn't know about it because we were already out on the tour in Europe. By the time we heard the album, it was out and in the charts, but the sound was awful, and I bet that was again according to Tony Iommi. By September 12th, the album gets put out with bad mix and album cover, and is met with polarizing responses and reactions. Some loved it, but others hated it. So it's time for me to dive into one of Black Sabbath's black sheeps of their discography. So, featuring 9 tracks, clocking in at the length of 41 minutes and 4 seconds, these 9 tracks, of course, starting with Trashed, then into the 1 minute and 58 instrumental Stonehenge, then into Disturbing the Priest, then of course into the last instrumental here, which clocks in at 45 seconds, that being The Dark, then into Zero the Hero, Digital Bitch, the title track, Hotline, and then finally ending with Keep It Warm. So there it is. There's the 9 tracks. I will confess, when I first heard this album in 2008, I was kind of conflicted with it. On one hand, I was surprised by the music that was contained and even liked a few of its songs. Hotline, Disturbing the Priest, and Zero the Hero. However, either it was the copy that my brother had initially downloaded, at the time it was pretty hard to come by on the wild, or the mix itself. But it kind of held me back from really appreciating it. At least in 2008. By October of 2009, when popping into Raspin' Music, now known as Mad Monk here in Fresno, my brother had finally came across a copy of Born Again, and got it. That was when I decided to give it a re-listen. Boy, did it finally click. So from November to December, I was listening to Born Again at a non-stop pace. I was now beginning to appreciate it, to then becoming one of my personal favorite Black Sabbath albums, and Ian Gillan albums in general. You could say that the mix for this one sucks, or that Ian Gillan does a bit too much vocally, but to me, it's those same very reasons why I ended up loving this album. Trash opens up the album and continues the, though for the last time, theme of quick, energetic, upbeat headbangers that is not unlike Neon Nights and Turn Up the Night. Of course, from this, you get a great sense of the kind of personality that Gillen has now injected into the sound of Sabbath, with his cheeky lyrics that basically describe a car crash that was the direct result of alcoholism. According to Tony Iommi in his autobiography, Ian's lyrics were about sexual things or true facts. even about stuff that happened at the manor there, and then they were good, but quite a departure from Geezer's and Ronnie's lyrics. And now what makes Trashed such a wild song lyrically is that it actually accounts an actual incident. The story is as followed. Gillen returned from a local pub one evening, took a car belonging to drummer Bill Ward, and commenced racing around a goat cart track on the Manor studio property. He then crashed the car, which burst into flames after he escaped uninjured. That's when he wrote Trashed, which is about the said crazy experience. But the album itself does not stop there. Like I originally stated earlier, one of my early favorites off of this album was Disturbing the Priest, which was easily the heaviest song they did, I would say possibly since Symptom of the Universe. It's a classic epic doomy song with an insanely sick riff, and all brought together by one of Ian Gillan's most psychotic vocal performances. The song, of course, comes immediately after the rather short atmospheric instrumental Stonehenge, which during the recorded sessions was about over 4 minutes long, but cut down for the final mix. Was handled by the late Quartz guitarist / keyboardist Jeff Nichols. As for the concept behind the making of Disturbing the Priest, it was written after a rehearsal space set up by Iommi in a small building near a local church. They received noise complaints from the resident priests, so hence where the lyrics and title came from. Regarding the musical direction of the song, also according to Bill Ward, I did some of the best drum work on that album. On Disturbing the Priest, there were some polyrhythms and some counterpoint things that I was doing, and I was using at least 20 different pieces of percussion towards the end of that song. I was real proud of a lot of the work that I did. Some of it invariably got lost in the mix, but I know that it's printed on those tracks. Another one of this album's standout tracks is Zero the Hero, which is another stellar epic doomy song, this time with an hypnotic-like groove to it. This song was also accompanied by a short atmospheric instrumental titled The Dark. It's a brilliant song with great performances from all members. Then there is the very frantic rocker that is Digital Bitch, which up to this point possibly was the band's fastest song from top to bottom with no breaks. Then there is Hotline, which is a hooky rocker with infectious hooks. Then we have the sort of eerie, slow, doomy ballad of the title track. This song took me years to really love this one, and especially appreciate. It's not too deep of a song, but because of Ian's odd-like way of writing lyrics, this one is pretty unique. For years, there was one line in this song that has had plenty of folks scratching their heads, wondering what the hell Gillen was even referring to. And I'm going to repeat it here, even if one of the sus lines is no longer PC to say today. But I'm going to say it anyways for demonstration purposes. So, the line in question is as follows. As you look through my window, deep into my room, at your future and freedom, the gray and plastic retards all floating in circles, and as you taste the fruits of new sensations, softly brushing your lips, as we rise when we challenge and kill. Whatever Ian Gillan was trying to get at here obviously confused plenty of people, but it was just recently where I think I finally now understand what it means by, and it probably wasn't that all difficult to get when you put it into the context of what the title of the song is. The song itself is a complete dig at not only the idea of being born again, but at those who are born again and how they like to get people to join their religion. Pretty much born again Christians who have a rush of wanting former members to become Christians again for possibly devious reasons. That's technically what I get from its message. Of course, because of understanding the message behind the song, it will rub people of faith the wrong way, just like my take on the meaning might. Then finally, there is the final song on this album, Keep It Warm. A less heavy song, but more bluesy song that kind of recalls the Dio albums with that new touch of Ian Gillan's wit and style. According to Bill Ward, as regarding the song, I saw Ian go into the studio one day, and I was fortunate and honored, actually, to be a part of a session. I watched him lay tracks on Keep It Warm. I felt like Ian was Ian in that song. I watched his incredible transformation of this man that really, I felt, delicately put lyrics together. It made sense. I thought he did an excellent job, and I really dig that song too. I will also point out this song was also another one that at first didn't initially click with me, but again, over time, I've come around onto it to where I now say that it nicely ends one of Black Sabbath's most unique album. So unique that they have never done another one like it again, ever again. And I think for that reason alone was also due to not having Ian Gillan again, because after this, Gillan was gone. In 1992, Tony Iommi recalled the atmosphere of having Ian Gillan as the singer for Black Sabbath. Iommi stated the following: Ian is a great singer, but he's from a completely different background, and it was difficult for him to come in and sing Sabbath material. Also in 1992, in an interview with Martin Baker, Ian Gillan reflected on his brief time with Black Sabbath, stating, "I was the worst singer Black Sabbath ever had. It was totally incompatible with any music they had ever done. I don't wear leathers. I wasn't of that image. I think the fans probably were in total state of confusion." It was during the Born Again tour where things were going south. To make a story short, the band's creative idea for the stage setup was to be Stonehenge, to coincide with the instrumental of the same name. Well, when the set pieces were revealed to the band, well, to their shocking surprise, the set pieces were too big, which this later came to be spoofed on in the classic This Is Spinal Tap film, where the members of Spinal Tap wanted a Stonehenge set, but what they got was a Little Henge. It was small. I was in danger to be crushed by dwarves. I love quoting that. Then to make matters worse, Ian Gillan never had time to learn any of the classic Black Sabbath songs. So what he did, he had papers with the lyrics written on them or printed. However, because of the band's idea to use smoke, the stage would sometimes be engulfed in it, that it became tough for Gillan to see his lyrics, and so he would have to find moments to reach down and search the papers. Oh boy, which would become disastrous. Also, besides the fact that Ian Gillan would wear Hawaiian shirts, apparently in protest of Bruce Dickinson, who he felt was ripping him off. Then to top this all off, because of Ian Gillan being in the band, they thought it would be fitting to play Smoke on the Water. That was met with mostly blank faces. And that pretty much ends Ian Gillan's time with Black Sabbath. Of course, Ian Gillan wasn't the only one who left. Bill Ward eventually left too, which was before the release, therefore after the sessions took place. Ward began drinking again near the end of the sessions and returned to Los Angeles for treatment once the album was completed, and has remained sober ever since. Ward has said that he enjoyed making the album, which remains his final studio album with the band, though he later would rejoin Black Sabbath plenty of times afterwards, but wouldn't become permanent again until when Ozzy reunited with them in the late 90s. But Born Again stands as Bill Ward's final studio album with Black Sabbath. And what an album to go out on. Of course, Bev Bevan would take over for the tour for Born Again, but would leave after the tour. to which Bill Ward would return for a brief time in 1984. After that, Geezer was on his in and outs with Tony in the 80s. Of course, Tony Iommi wanted to go solo, but labels kept pushing him to use the Black Sabbath name, so that led to one of Black Sabbath's biggest black sheep period, with either Glenn Hughes, Ray Gillen, and of course, Tony Martin, and eventually reuniting the Dio era of the band in 1992 for Dehumanizer, and after that, the rest is history. Of course, I already covered Dehumanizer on this channel last year as a Album of the Week episode. Now, Tony Iommi has been working on a remix for Born Again, but most recently has stated that the remix has to be waited on. But at some point, we will see that long-awaited remix, and I hope that it's worth the wait. So there it is. Born Again is now in the Album of the Week books. So for those who had spent years listening to this album, if you have any thoughts, if they are either positive or negative, you can leave them all in the comments section below. So with that, this is Heavy Thrasher saying I'm out, and I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.